What's up everybody, Darty B here. Seeing as how Fatalis will become available in Monster Hunter World Iceborne less than 12 hours after this video goes up, I really wanted to take a second and ask a quick favor of the wonderful community that we have playing this game. As you guys probably know, back in July we had another colossally hyped black dragon added to the game in the form of Alatreon, or Alatreon. I know in-game they say it Alatreon, in my brain it's always been Alatreon, so please forgive me if I have a funky pronunciation going forward that you don't like. And Alatreon was the blazing black master of the elements, and let me tell you, he was a true challenge for just about everyone on release. The devs had hinted at what we would need to do to beat him, but all we had to go on at first was that in order to contain his cinematic showstopper move, Escaton Judgment, we would need to use elemental weapons. There are fantastic clips from day one of even such legends as Chris from Team Darkside getting absolutely destroyed on their early attempts against this monster. However, by observing his various elemental active states and learning from the information gathered by the community and given out by characters in the game, many players were able to defeat Alatreon quite quickly and released guides to help those who had not yet been so fortunate. However, it didn't take long before a lot of people grew tired of trying to take down Alatreon. Reddit, Steam, and various other platforms became full of complaint threads and memes focused on the significantly difficult and punishing Escaton Judgment. Even now, over 2 months after his release, Alatreon is still arguably the most polarizing monster that has yet been added with Iceborne. It sparked a lot of discussion about damage checks, one-shot moves, and requiring players to use specific loadouts to achieve victory, and whether these mechanics have any place in a Monster Hunter game. Many speculate that similar gimmicks will be incorporated with the Fatalis fight that's about to be added. Even if this is the case, I'd like for everyone to refrain from judging Fatalis to be a bad or good fight on launch day, and I'm about to share my reasons why. Less than a month ago, I thought Alatreon was impossible, but today is one of my favorite fights in the game, and I'll be talking over a recording I made of myself fighting him. I'm not perfect at the game by any stretch, and I make lots of mistakes in this fight, but I can still do it, so I hope that's motivating to those of you who haven't quite beaten him just yet. You can do this. You'll get there. I remember diving into the Alatreon special assignment with an Awakened Fire Switch Axe from Safi Jiva, alongside one of my good friends who was using Velkhana dual blades. Once we realized that Alatreon starts in Fire active, we farmed Velkhana so I could get her Switch Axe and went back into the fight. At this point, we were both around MR70 and hadn't augmented any of our gear, so from a functional standpoint we may as well have been MR24, which happens to be the minimum requirement to challenge Alatreon. After about a week of trying, I hated Alatreon with a passion, just as many of my fellow hunters have and still do. I'll be the first to admit that we really were not prepared from an equipment standpoint, even with the Velkhana weapons and Ice Attack 6 slotted into our builds. Velkhana's weapons are solid, but since we kind of just slapped them into our existing builds, they really weren't up to par with the requirements to contain Escaton Judgment. Playing both solo and together, he and I racked up well over 50 failed attempts each on Alatreon. Our carts came in many forms, ranging from getting hit by a prone attack and then card into the next move, failing to properly read Alatreon's movements, failing to meet the elemental damage check, or failing to break the horns while also not dealing enough damage to kill Alatreon within the carts allotted. Even as we both began to recognize every one of his moves before they came out, our desperation to contain Escaton Judgment with our subpar elemental builds made us take stupid risks that eventually led to a cart in some form or another. I, in particular, had an issue with recognizing damage windows after attacks. I knew Alatreon's moves, but I wouldn't capitalize on the opportunities that they would give me to deal damage. Eventually, we both stopped trying and pretty much just stopped playing Iceborne in general for most of the rest of the summer. My big breakthrough came as I was about to go back to university, and made a comment on how fun it was to dodge Alatreon's attacks, but how crummy it was to have to deal with Escaton Judgment on a meme posted on Reddit. Someone responded to my statement by essentially saying that if I was still struggling with Escaton after 2 months, I was just bad at the game. I was insulted, and responded with a massive sob story about how I had 50 plus attempts, Ice Attack 6, Velkhana Switch Axe, 300 hours on the game, blah 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 blah. It was pathetic, full of excuses, not the words of someone in a mindset that allows for improvement. In my mind, I was playing as well as was humanly possible without being a speedrunner, and there was nothing that could fix my problems except for Capcom nerfing Escaton Judgment's damage threshold. Some other people on that thread tried giving me advice and helping me understand the fight better, but most of it I'd heard before. I thanked them for their kindness and advice, but it didn't change my mind about the fight being stupid. Then the guy who originally said that I was just bad sent me a link to a YouTube video. He had recorded himself killing Alatreon with a greatsword as a demonstration of every single possible attack window, specifically for me. He didn't tell me to change my gear or my weapon. He just showed me what I was missing. Every one of the moves he showed in that video was one that I recognized and knew, but what I hadn't been doing all that time was actually applying my knowledge of those moves to deal damage between attacks. This video was a turning point for me. I started playing Monster Hunter again, and decided that I should get an Awakened Safi'jiiva switch axe for ice. After a couple of sieges, I was able to acquire the weapon, and customize it with attack and element awakens. At this point, I started to fight Alatreon again. With every attempt, I got closer and closer, but I kept messing up in various ways. I showed the video to my friend, and he too got excited about trying again, opting to make an entirely new build using Alatreon armor farmed with powering, and the Alatreon dual blades. We started actually learning when it was safe to use flinch shots, weakened parts, and learned how to iframe through most of his attacks, something that I had never had to learn before in World. As I got better and better at fighting Alatreon, I realized that throughout most of Iceborne, I'd played with absolutely no skill as a hunter. Up to this point, I had abused mounts, wall knocks with the clutch claw, and spammed zero-sum discharge to win hunts. Seriously, go watch any of my Monster Hunter videos on this channel, and this is most of what I do. Alatreon is so special and so difficult because he doesn't make it easy for you to do those things without perfectly planning and executing them. The icing on the cake is the fact that Alatreon doesn't let you be comfortable. That's the entire purpose of Escaton Judgment. It forces you to actually learn how to effectively deal damage and adapt to the monster. And as a result, as I began to contain it more regularly, I began to realize just how satisfying and different Alatreon's hunt felt from the majority of other hunts that I did. My friend and I finally killed Alatreon on Labor Day for the very first time. We had had 2 carts and had had many mistakes, but that was probably the most accomplished I've ever felt while playing a video game. Each of us was able to take him down solo within a week or 2 after this. Learning and overcoming Alatreon helped me realize just how much room to grow I still had as a hunter, and this knowledge was fascinating to me. With Fatalis being announced, he and I were determined to be ready, and so we finally put in the effort to reach MR 100. Finally unlocking the full capacity of Iceborne's endgame was thrilling and beyond exciting. In just a few weeks, while actively taking university classes, I've rocketed up to over MR 150 by finally maxing out 3 of my Guiding Lens regions, and by going back and completing optional quests that I never bothered with because I didn't care to try and make new builds. I've started to learn new weapons and become more adaptable in my hunting style, and my attention to monsters' movesets, weaknesses, and patterns has never been so keen. I now use different mantles for different monsters, actively utilize consumables like demon drugs and demon powder, eat for buffs that I actually will use, generally attack up large, rather than just defaulting to Chef's Choice for health, and finally built up the courage to try using Safi'jiiva armor due to being able to use health augments on my weapons, which made Alatreon even more manageable and fun. Monsters that I used to hate because I would just unga-bunga when fighting them are now a lot more engaging because I'm now actually trying to have a proper fight, rather than just a slapboxing contest where whoever stuns the other first wins. My enjoyment and love for Monster Hunter has grown in a way that I never would have expected, all because someone on Reddit was brave enough to tell me that I was doing something wrong, and then show me how to do it right. The big idea that I'm going for with this story is that Fatalis is probably going to kick our butts just as bad as Alatreon, maybe even worse. Even if the first time fighting him feels like the most impossible and difficult challenge ever, I'm not going to give up on him this time. I'm going to keep fighting and learning and adapting until I stand triumphant. Yes, Alatreon was extremely hard, and for a while I didn't want anything to do with him, but the experience of learning how to beat him was unparalleled. That's what Monster Hunter is all about. From the initial frustration and challenge of facing a monster that you don't understand all the way to your triumphant victory, the journey is just as important and rewarding as the ultimate destination. And Iceborne has truly been a wonderful journey. Please don't think that you have to love Alatreon or Fatalis because of what I've said here. Everyone has a right to their opinion and to like or dislike what they want. I just wanted to challenge everyone to keep an open mind and forego judgment a little bit longer with Fatalis than we all did with Alatreon. Good luck, everyone, and may the Sapphire Star light your way to Castle Schrade.
pinta bien. No pinta bien.